Coming up this morning on the Dattitude podcast, does the signing of an obscure right tackle from the worst team in football last year suddenly mean everything is okay on the offensive line? Does it mean the Saints can go out and sign a skilled player and make the draft fun again? Or is protecting your quarterback still important in this league? I guess you could see where I'm going with this. We'll talk about it with Saints editor Zach Ewing, as well as touch on both the NCAA men's and women's tournament, including another run to the Sweet 16 for the LSU Lady Tigers. And how did Gabe do versus AI? We've changed the name of the segment, which doesn't mean we have any more confidence the machine is going to get it right. Well, you've come here for the music, so let's give the people what they want.
If you're looking for the latest scoop and in-depth interviews on the Saints, the NFL, the Pelicans, LSU, along with the best bets of the week, then lucky you. Along with high-powered, in-the-know guests who cover our teams, Jim Derry brings plenty of Dattitude. And he'll always tell you the way it is, or at least the way he thinks it is.
Where you at, Dattitude family? Welcome to the first bank and trust of Greater Saintsville, where we seem to have a signing a day. How did I get this money anyway? Just pull it out the sky? I don't know what's going on. I want to know, by the way, if there's a conspiracy. Second straight day second straight Dattitude where there were free agent signings immediately after the show was over. They're like, don't let Derry have it. I'm sure that's it. Monday, they re-signed safety Ugo Amadi, and more significantly, guard Dillon Radunz. What does that mean for potential draft plans? We're going to get into it very shortly. But first, we'll tell you, of course, that this is Dattitude, episode number 354, presented by Evangeline Securities for a Wednesday, March the 26th, 2025. I'm your host, Jim Derry, 34 and a half years on the New Orleans sports media scene. Getting pretty close to 35. It'll be 35 in, I don't know what month. I got to figure that out. Anyway, doesn't matter. You don't care. I thank you for being a part of this ever-growing family. A couple of birthdays real quick. A couple of friends with birthdays today. My good friend Drew Reinhardt is having a birthday. He says I'm not allowed to tell you which one it is. Let's just say that one of the reasons why I love him so much is because he's older than I. And my friend David Gordon also having a birthday today. I haven't seen either one of those guys in a little bit, so I hope they're having a great day. Wednesday, March the 26th. Here we are. I can't believe we're closing in on the end of March, which means we'll get into NFL draft month, which means we'll focus more and more on the draft itself than just talk about what do things mean for the draft. I mean, maybe we'll do our own mock. We already told you, Gabe and I are probably going to do a show in which we do a mock by going through and picking. Like, we'll have no idea what the mock's going to be because he'll pick, then I'll pick. I don't know. Maybe we'll have a third person involved. I have no idea. Today on the show, Zach Ewing, our Saints editor here at the Dattitude and the Advocate, will come on at 11:20. We'll talk more about Dillon Radunz and whether it changes draft plans. And when I say change draft plans, the Saints may have had draft plans already. I mean, just because I'm saying change it, maybe it changes my idea of what the draft plan should be, right? Doesn't mean that they've changed their plans. Their plans may have been the same all along. However, does this signing change everything? We'll get to that. I'm going to get to your comments, of course. We're about to show some here. You could be a part of the show if you don't know this already by typing in your comment, whether you're watching on YouTube or Facebook. And if you haven't already done so, please, please, please subscribe to our Dattitude YouTube page. That's where the Dattitude family lives. If you're watching on Facebook or listening after the fact, the podcast. Yep. You can always know when we go on the air live, which is supposed to be Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 11 a.m. Central Time. I say supposed to be. We're pretty much on it. Every now and then I take a break or whatever, but we're on it right now. Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 11 a.m. Central Time. You can get in touch with me on X at Jim Derry Jr. via email, jderry@theadvocate.com. All right. Gabe told me I'm sounding sick, and you know what? I don't feel that great. I mean, I don't feel like I'm sick. I don't feel like I'm necessarily coming down with. I just was sick. Like, I was sick during vacation. I was sick over. I don't know what's going on. Am I just getting old? I don't know. I just verklempt. I was coughing on the show the other day. My cough button wasn't working. It's one of those days. All right, we're gonna get to all your comments and corrections. Yeah, we got corrections in the chat this morning. I see. Before we get to the rest of the show, let me tell you about our friends at Evangeline Securities. Of course, they are a company that can help you decide if it's the right time to sell your family-run or privately held business. And just as importantly, they can figure out what that business is worth. That is you or someone you know. It's time to reach out to Evangeline's founding and managing partners, Nick Braden and Ron Hemel. They will start by scheduling a complimentary valuation from their offices either on Poydras Street or in Lafayette. From there, you'll be able to make a well-informed decision on whether you want to proceed. You know, they'll just slide you right in. You decide if you want to proceed. By the way, Nick says if it doesn't work out with the Radunz, he can play left guard. I mean, that's an option I hadn't thought of yet. I mean, I'm not sure. He might have to build up his strength or whatever. He seems kind of like an athlete. I mean, they've had enough issues at left guard. Who knows? What happens after Nick signs on as left guard? Oh, I mean, after you decide to proceed. We'll talk about that later in the show. In the meantime, you can check them out at www.evangelinesecurities.com. What we got this morning? This ought to be fun, Gabe. Scott Hartman. Welcome to the Dattitude family, my friend. He says, I've heard you refer to the 98-yard touchdown from Breeze to Cooks as a screen pass. It wasn't a screen. Breeze hit Cooks in stride down the left side of the field. Yes, not a long pass, but not a screen. How about, as Gabe had a great idea for this before we went on the air this morning, I agree with him. Let's just call it a long screen. Then we can both be right. I like when everybody's right. You know? Works for me. Gary says, good morning. Good morning. Scott J, good morning, everyone. UBN is here, of course. Take the sweater off, buddy. Cold is gone. Finally, no. Not in my office. I like to make it frigid in here, buddy. That's why we put AC in my studio back here. I can make it as cold as I want. I can have it 52 degrees in August if I want to. Pretty darn cold. You wouldn't like it in here right now. Charles Mangus. Good morning. Good morning, the Dattitude family. And Charles is defending Scott. He says if you threw him tight off the line and Cooks took it all the way. I mean, I'm going to go find the play. If I remember it correctly, the way they threw it, I think it's still a screen. I mean, we're joking about the long screen thing, but I think it's still a screen. I don't know. Mark Gapsky, happy baseball league. Major League Baseball season starts tomorrow. You're flying out to San Diego for the Padres home opener. Go Cubs. Absolutely. I hate when the there's two. Well, I would say two places. There's one place or two places, I should say. It doesn't happen very often. There's two places in one region where I hate when the Cubs open their season. This is not, they're starting Arizona. I hate when the Cubs open up on the West Coast because especially when they're playing, their opening game of the year is 9-10 Central Time. Come on, man. And we got a show Friday morning, so I'm going to be watching Cubs baseball till midnight or whatever, which means probably not going to go to bed till like 1 or 2. It is what it is. But at least it's better than starting in Houston or Texas with Major League Baseball's obnoxious, ridiculous blackout rules that we've talked about on the show before, and we'll probably talk about again. The dumbest blackout rules, of course, in the history of any sport. I keep hearing they're going to remember when my good friend Derek Gould told us a couple of years ago in the show that they were going to every baseball game is going to be on the air live within the next year or two. I got to get him on the show because that did not happen. But it pisses me off because when they start in Houston or Texas, because then I can't even watch it. Terrence says Scott is correct. Everybody's ganging up on him this morning. Mal. Saints trade up for Cam Ward. What happens to Carr? Repeat after me. 0.0. Ain't happening. It's not happening. They're not trading up to get Cam Ward. You can dream, though. All you Carr haters, keep on dreaming. That'll make this show's numbers go up. Brian Cabot, good morning, Dattitude fam. I hope not that I'm getting sick, I guess. Yeah. Scott, it is my show. I kid because I love. Usually when I'm joking, I'm kidding. It doesn't come out. It never comes out the right way because we can't see each other's face. We can't go back at each other. Yeah, whatever. All right, I'm gonna have to go find. Now you're gonna like challenge me. Friday, I'm gonna try to find the play and show it in the show. I mean, in this world of this internet's thing, I should be able to find it, right? Chad Gage, good morning, men and women. Are you allowed to say that in these days? Well, why wouldn't you? What do you want to say? I mean, are sheep watching the show? Elephants? Giraffes? I'm not sure what you want to say. Sure, Gabe, if you want to find a video and upload it, we'll show it. As long as you're going to have to cut it. I don't want a minute-long video. But, yeah, I mean, we'll show it. I'll let them prove that they're right. They want to gang up on me this morning. Oh, man. One of those days. Earl's pick. I mean, Zach's going to gang up on me, I'm sure, in 8 minutes. He loves to come on and pick on me. Earl's picks, they're probably going to start slow, but still pull close to 90 wins. Cubs? Yeah. I actually think it's promising season for the Cubs. They're favorites in the NL Central. Not that majority of the people watching this show give a damn about the Chicago Cubs. Terrence, who's on my wish list at number 9? No different than my wish list was about 4 months ago. Will Campbell, and Will Campbell if he doesn't work out. Again, we're going to get there. I don't really understand this comment. I mean, I guess, Lewis, you're talking about Derek Carr not talking a lot. What do you want him to say? I mean, I'm trying to remember times, and there's a lot of, look, I said during the Super Bowl, I wish he would have been around, but then I found out he had a scheduled paid engagement, okay, during the Super Bowl week. Well, I mean, I gave the Rat credit because the Rat was around Super Bowl row, and we had him on this show, as a matter of fact. I was on the Saints Insider show. Picture of me dapping it up with the Rat. So you can find it, again, on this thing they call the internet. But what do you want him to do? What do you want him to say? Is my question. Brandon Moe, go Saints. Who dat, baby? Who dat? Oh, Sean, we're going to talk about this morning. With the Giants' recent moves, does Shedeur Sanders fall in the draft? I mean, I think Shedeur Sanders was going to fall in the draft anyway. Saints still aren't going to draft him. That's what you're asking. You know, I joke about, we joke and y'all joke, whatever, everybody jokes. But some of the things the Saints have done and Mickey Loomis and all that, whatever, blah, blah. But the Patriots and the Giants, did you see this yesterday? What in the hell are they thinking? Stephon Diggs coming off of an ACL tear. He's going to be 32 in November, which is the same age as Brandon Cooks, by the way. Stephon Diggs gets a 3-year, $69 million contract with the Patriots. Make it make sense. You got to make that one make sense. I don't get it at all. Meanwhile, the Giants, I mean, what are they thinking? Russell Wilson? Is that really going to be their starting quarterback? 1 year, $10.5 million. I mean, the Giants going to giant. I don't know, man. It wasn't that long ago when they were like, you think Giants fans miss Eli Manning? You could probably bring his 45-year-old ass or however old he is back to the Giants and let him play, and wouldn't be any worse than what they got. So we joke about Giants. I mean, we joke about the Saints, but man, Giants. I don't know, man. So, but anyway, Sean, back to your question about with the recent moves, does Shedeur Sanders fall in the draft? I don't think this has anything to do with it. I think he was falling anyway. So I think he falls past the Saints. I think he's one of those guys, every year, it seems like every year there's a guy that's supposed to go in the top 4 or 5 that just kind of falls into like 20 or 25 or whatever. What was it, Gabe? What was it Will Levis was supposed to go a couple of years ago? Wasn't he supposed to? Was it 3? Talking about him going 3? And then he just dropped and dropped and dropped and dropped. And we see it every year in the green room. I remember, 25 years ago, longer than that now, I'm old. 30 years ago, or 30 years ago-ish, Randy Moss was supposed to go in the top 10. Randy Moss, and obviously, other than Jerry Rice, you could make an argument that Randy Moss is the greatest receiver of all time. I mean, but all his quote-unquote issues, Randy Moss dropped on draft night. Kept dropping. Went to I think he went number 20. I don't know. Every year there's somebody. It could be Shedeur Sanders this year. Brian Cabot, to answer the O-line, dear Lord, hope not. But so good. By the way, that's pollen. I am allergic to pollen, by the way. Gabe can't find the video. We'll find it before Friday. We'll show it. Aaron says, "Man, sheep love Dattitude." A lot of sheep in this world, Terrence. Not just here in Dattitude. Sheep are everywhere. They're everywhere. Somebody needs to fleece them. Terrence, what if Campbell is gone? We're going to get into that. Maybe not as much today. We're going to start. Look, the next month, we got a whole month to talk about draft. I just think it's got to be O-line. Okay, that's my opinion. We'll see. Going to ask Zach what he thinks in just a minute. Coming on in about 2 minutes. It wasn't $30 million to Russ. It was $10.5 million. There are bonuses in it that could make it worth up to $21 million, if I remember correctly. Still too much. $10.5 million is too much for Russell Wilson. I mean, Russell Wilson. I mean, they got Jameis. Sean wants to know if they're going to let Jameis compete for QB1. Why wouldn't you? I mean, give me some some Giants training camp. They'd be fun on when you get old, sucks to have brain farts. Hard Knocks. I don't think they're eligible though. Okay, because Russ is infinitely better. Not. All right. John Carter from Who Dat from DC with Cook signing. Is Olave some trade bait? This keeps coming up. I'm glad you brought it up because I'm going to bring this up with Zach. I don't want to say 0.0 on trade bait. My son came over here yesterday for dinner. This has become like a talking point now. Why? Because talking heads who like clicks make it so. Chris Olave's not going anywhere. They're not going to get what they would need to get. Charles says, it's on Google. He just saw it. There you go. It's got to be true. Terrence waiting like Aaron Rodgers going to the Steelers. I don't know. There you go, Sean. What do I think of the trade rooms? You know what? Let's start with that. Why not? Let's bring him on. It's going to start off. By the way, how are you, Zach Ewing? Good morning.
I'm fantastic, man. It's a new adventure every day.
We're just less than a month away from the draft now. So, just when we think we got a little break, we don't. So there you go. That's the world we live in.
Yeah. And I mean, this is a big draft for the Saints. I know we seem to say that every year, but they've got, I think, 11 picks this year.
Yeah,
and
it is
5 in the first 4 rounds. And you look at their salary cap and they're starting to kind of slowly, we always say reset. What the Saints are doing with their salary cap is more like a big ass truck. Beep, beep.
I agree.
They're kind of turning it around. But in order to remain competitive while you do that, you have to ace the draft. And they haven't been awful in the draft the last couple of years, but they've got to have a really good one.
No, I agree. I think this is the most important draft for the Saints in quite some time. I mean, last year was important. I still think they did okay. I may back off a little bit. I think I gave him an A- right after draft. I may change it a little bit, but it's still too early. We draft grades later on, but we'll see. But you're jumping right into it. I didn't even get a chance to. How do you feel about your Mariners this year? Are your Mariners going to be okay? I mean, obviously, I'm excited about the Cubs. That there's favorites in the NL Central. Are you excited about the Mariners?
I always get excited for opening day.
Good pitching staff.
They have a great pitching staff. Unfortunately, they have taken what should be a championship window and kind of sat on their hands. And so, it's hard not to think like, boy, this could be a lot better if they had gone and signed Pete Alonso or Christian Walker or somebody to play first base.
They should have.
And they didn't have the money to do that, or so they say. I mean, it's an ownership problem. But now, one of their starters, George Kirby's already hurt. And if you get another starter hurt, all of a sudden you're looking at a below average offense and a rotation that's not that deep anymore. And I have questions, but what is spring for if not for hope?
That's right. How many times do we have to say it on the show? Without hope, life is meaningless. By the way, it must be Correction Wednesday because everyone's just correcting me today. That's all good. I appreciate the love. Terrence says, I said Moss was 20. Moss was 21. Sorry about that, Terrence. I didn't mean to ruin anyone's morning, and I'm being completely tongue-in-cheek when I say that. I know we're just kidding. UBN says, we missed you. Can we talk analytics, please?
Let's do it. What do you want to analyze?
We'll save that for another show. I got a feeling, by the way, that this year, I think Kellen Moore is going to be a very analytics type coach. I don't know that for sure. Obviously, he's never been a coach. Just had that feeling. So we'll have plenty of times to chat about it in the press box, I'm sure. Jeff Haspel says, need a plug and play left tackle first. I mean, you could make an argument, and I'm not making that argument, but I think Zach might, that the Saints already have their plug and play left tackle.
It's interesting because I don't know that there is a plug and play left tackle in this, at least in the top half of the first round of this draft. Like Will Campbell, maybe, but he played some guard.
He's not Alt. He's not Joe Alt.
Yeah, exactly. He's not even Tali Fuanga, who I think you just say, hey, he's a day one starter. The Saints may not have a choice if they take Will Campbell, or I saw the comment, somebody asking for another name besides Campbell. Armand Membu of Missouri would be the other one, who's probably a top 10. And he's similar in that he has experience as a guard and a tackle, which appeals to me for the Saints because what they really need is a guard. Okay, like Trevor Penning is the wild card in this conversation.
Look, I hate to interrupt. Look, I know this sounds silly to get excited about anything. We're going to get into Trevor Penning a little bit in a minute, and I know this is just pure speculation, and I'm not sitting there and I'm not watching every day. I just think by what I saw last year and the way that Penning was, I was completely surprised about how well he was able to run block last year at right tackle. Okay, his pass blocking still needs some work. But to me, what I saw on the field kind of translates to him moving to guard, and I really think he could be successful there.
I agree. It makes sense on the surface. He's a big guy. He's a mauler. He's better in run blocking than he is in pass pro. Like, it makes sense to say, Trevor Penning, you go play left guard. But we've been having this conversation for more than a year now. And the Saints have not, if they've tried it, it's only
they didn't have any choices to tackle, though.
It's only been behind closed doors, and they haven't, like, it seems to me that if they were going to do that with Trevor Penning, they'd have done it already. And maybe I'm wrong. Maybe you're right. Maybe it was just out of necessity, and they absolutely needed him at tackle. And I thought he was okay. Like, if Trevor Penning's your swing tackle, you're probably fine.
Right.
If he's your third tackle, the guy coming off the bench, he's not a disaster. Is he the starting tackle on a playoff team? Probably not. And so that's where I'm like, the guys like Campbell and Membu appeal to me because they can play either spot. And Membu specifically,
you would know Membu is better.
I saw Gabe's comment, like, yeah, he's a Mizzou guy. I'm a Mizzou guy. But that, for purposes of this conversation, that means I've followed him. He was dominant at times in the SEC at both spots. And Will Campbell, quite frankly, to me, I was a little underwhelmed by him last year. Like,
so was I.
Yeah, I mean, people talk about his arm length and things like that, and I'm not going to sit here and I'm not a good enough scout to say this is a problem and here's why. Although it's pretty easy to see if an offensive lineman's arms aren't long enough, how that could be an issue. I just want to see from a guy who's a top 10 pick as an offensive lineman. I want to see it on Saturdays in a league like the SEC.
Yeah.
And I didn't see it consistently from Will Campbell. I saw it more from Membu. Then he goes to the combine and has this fantastic workout. He's kind of an athletic freak. The Saints, Jeff Ireland and his scouting department historically have loved these athletic freaks. Now he's got a new coaching staff. Maybe they go in and say, well, we don't, we want a certain type of player there. Kellen Moore is going to have some say in that, but he certainly fits what the Saints want to do. Now, I also think
I don't like that he's 6'4" as a tackle. I would you? I don't know. 6'4" as a tackle. You want to tackle. You draft someone that high. To me, you're looking for someone that's like 6'6". But
yeah,
does it matter that much?
And again, I think that there is a world in which the Saints keep penning at right tackle, and either Membu or Campbell or whomever they draft, is the left guard. And there's also Dillon Radunz, who they just signed. Who could fit in that equation somewhere. And I also think it's probably dangerous to fixate on offensive line because depending on how this top 10 falls, there's some other guys I'm really intrigued by.
Oh, we're going to get into that.
Yeah,
we're going to get into that.
Yeah.
We're definitely going to get into that. And that's why the headline of today's show is there a change in draft plans? And again, when I say change in draft plans, maybe it's more of a change of what I was thinking rather than what the Saints were thinking, because the Saints may have had plans all along to do whatever they wanted to do, or maybe they don't have a plan. Who knows? Maybe they're going to fly by the seat of their pants. But before we get into that, right before you came on, I'm sure you saw this there, all this talk, and I want to just put this, I want to squash this room. Or maybe you don't want to squash it, we'll see. But I want to put this room into bed because I think, little chance. I'm not going to say 0.0. But there's little chance, in my opinion, the Saints are going to try to trade Chris Olave. First of all, I don't think they would get enough in return back. Rumors of him, the Patriots want him. Well, they just went out and signed Stephon Diggs. Of course, there's rumors about potentially the Patriots wanting to go trade for receivers because they don't have any. But, that doesn't mean it's so. I just don't think the Saints, you're not going to get a first-round pick for an Olave. And you're just, I don't think it's worth any more than that. To go further than that, and who wants a 4 times concussed wide receiver who's going into the 4th year of his career?
Yeah, it just doesn't pass the smell test.
Not at all.
You're trading a guy who has been a pretty darn good player at times in his short career so far. You would be trading him at the absolute nadir of his value, like the lowest it's ever been. So just from a supply and demand standpoint, that's probably not the right term, but just from an economic standpoint, it doesn't make sense to sell low. And then the other factor here is like wide receiver is a pretty dire need for the Saints. Now I know they just went out and got Brandon Cooks, and maybe he fills that third wide receiver role. They had games at the end of last year where they were trotting out Mason Tipton, Bub Means, and a box of nuts and bolts. Like, it was ugly. And
the return dude from San Francisco that they re-signed.
Pettis, yeah. Like if you take any team and say your top 2 wide receivers are out for the season, you're going to have, like, it's not going to look pretty. But the Saints have a often concussed number 1 and a number 2 receiver who's coming off of a serious knee injury. Like, you have to have help there. Yeah. And I don't think that trading away that number 1 receiver is the way to address the position. Like, the only possibility, Jim, I'll say, is if they just get completely blown away. Like, if the Titans say, yeah, you can have number 1 for number 9 and Chris Olave.
Never going to happen.
Yeah. But like the chance of that happening is so slim. I just don't see why you'd do it.
As Earl says, why would you trade Olave when you're in such need at wide receiver, which is exactly what we're talking about this morning. All right, here's another rumor we'll address. Another thing that's not happening. I said this earlier. I've said this before in the show. This is not happening. I know the Saints like to trade up, but David Bartolone, thoughts on Cam Ward rumors? He hopes he don't mortgage a future. Saints are not. Look, I don't know that you and I haven't really talked about this as much, but I think the Saints know, look, that Carr is their quarterback this year. I think there's I said this last year. I think there's a very strong likelihood that he's a quarterback again in 26. He's the bridge to the future. If the Saints are going to draft a quarterback, I just think it's way more likely that they do it in 2026. And I certainly don't think they're going to trade up. When we talk about how important this draft is and how many picks this team needs right now, they're going to trade up and go get a Cam Ward. It just doesn't make any sense.
No, and I think people also got to understand, like, the famous draft value chart that Jimmy Johnson came up with in the late 80s, early 90s, whatever it was. And there's been adjustments to it, but it's still relevant today. The number 1 pick is worth 3,000 points in that value chart. The number 9 pick is worth, I've got it right here, is 1,350, less than half. Okay. So in order to get to that number 1 pick, you have to trade your number 9 pick and then the equivalent of more than another number 9 pick, which means, and future draft picks don't hold as much value. So you can't just throw in next year's first rounder. You'd probably have to throw in next year's first rounder and maybe this year's second rounder.
Yeah, no.
That might get you there. And so if I told you, yes, you could have Cam Ward, but it's going to cost you the number 9 pick, it's going to cost you the number 40 pick, which is worth 500 points, and it's going to cost you next year's first rounder. And just because of the way these things get inflated, and the Tennessee Titans might be able to start a bidding war if other teams want Cam Ward, you may have to overpay for that 3,000 point pick.
You just can't.
So now you're talking about, what if I told you you could have Cam Ward, but you've got to give up number 9, number 40, next year's first rounder, and your 2027 second rounder, or whatever it is. Like, are you all still on board with that? Because
the Carr haters are.
I just, even if you're a Carr hater,
the Carr haters are.
I know you talk about Carr a lot on the show, and come to his defense, and I use air quotes in defense because you're not even really defending him as much as just calling him what he is, which is an average quarterback in the NFL, an average starting quarterback. You can get by with an average starting quarterback and go draft your QB next year. And maybe next year's the year you mortgage a little bit of the future to go get the guy you really want. Next year's quarterback draft class excites me. Cam Ward's going to be a good player in this league, but he may be the only quarterback I feel that way about.
In my opinion, he's the only quarterback who even has a chance to be a star. I mean, I know people keep talking about Jackson Dart or whatever. Great. I mean, I don't understand why he's rising up the draft board so quickly. I don't get it. I don't think he's a starter or a quarterback, whatever. I just think my opinion is, and Shedeur Sanders to me is more of like, obviously completely, he's a different size kind of guy, not exactly like him, but I think he's more of a Taysom Hill type. I think that's where exactly. You don't know what he's going to be. I don't think he's a starting quarterback in the NFL. So with that being said, I think Cam Ward is the only potential starting quarterback in this draft, but that's just not something you just reach out and do. By the way, Lance, who dat? Welcome. Glad you're here this morning.
Well, so, what does everyone think the Saints are doing with Derek Carr in this scenario? I wonder. Like,
what do you think they're doing, or what do they want him? What do they want to do with Derek Carr?
They already restructured Carr's deal. If you cut him, you're still paying a hefty. It's not like you've got a whole bunch of money you can go spend, and it's not like there's going to be a lot of players on the market by then either. You could trade him possibly. Like maybe that's a potential. The Steelers don't sign Aaron Rodgers. They don't get a guy they like in the draft, and they're willing to pay a little more for him. You're still got a cap hit. I mean, are you mortgaging the future to draft Cam Ward to sit behind Derek Carr for a year? Because he might need that. But
I mean, that's what he would do.
It just doesn't make a lot of sense.
No, they wouldn't have done this way if they didn't think that if they didn't think Derek Carr was the quarterback, certainly for this year. And again, likely for the year after. Don't want to hear that. I'm turning this show off. I can't believe he's saying that. I don't want to hear that. UBN says if he wants to see the Saints draft Dart and then a running back and a wide receiver, to see my head explode. 0.0. Not going to happen. Calvin says,
I want that too.
Yeah, that'll be a great for a live show for sure. Calvin, I promise you, I don't know anything about you, Calvin 14, but there's no doubt in my mind you are a Derek Carr hater. Keep bridging for a 5-7 win season. A quick way to create coaching carousel. So you're basically saying if Derek Carr is the starting quarterback for the next 2 years, it's a 5-7 win season. Horse hockey. I mean, when Derek Carr is healthy, I mean, I'm not saying they're a Super Bowl caliber team. They're not. I mean, let's get real. But I think for a coach to be successful, you can't go through 5 to 7 win seasons multiple times in a row. And that's why I think they're doing what they're doing, so that Kellen Moore can start off on the right foot. And the only way to start off on the right foot is with a quarterback who knows what the hell he's doing. And to me, the only option right now is Derek Carr at this point. At this point. I stress at this point.
Right. And I don't want to say, like you're 0.0. It's not 0.0 that something could happen. Somebody could always come in and say,
you always say 0.0, not possible. We had this conversation.
Yeah, we'll give you way more than what Derek Carr is worth, and the Saints, it's an offer they can't refuse. I guess it could happen. I'm not going to put it past anybody, because people do get desperate even for an average starting quarterback. Because we talk about like the Pittsburgh Steelers. What would that franchise be with Derek Carr at quarterback? Like, I feel like they'd be pretty good.
They'd be really good.
Yeah. So maybe the Steelers see him as the missing piece. And if that happens and they're willing to overpay and things change, like things could change. But at this point, I think it's more constructive to say, if the Saints are going to trade up, there's a couple guys I could. One is Armand Membu, because you're starting to see in mock drafts that he may be gone by number 9. And if the Saints really want that help, they could trade up a couple spots. The others are the defensive linemen who are supposed to go before the Saints pick. What happens if, this one's less likely, but Abdul Carter or Mason Graham slips to 6th or 7th? Do the Saints at that point feel like, man, we could
possible
move up from number 9 and really feel a need? Because, like, let's say pick number 6 on that draft value chart is 1,600 points. Again, pick 9 is 1,350. Now we're in the same ballpark. Now we're throwing in a 3rd rounder and we're there. Like maybe a 2nd rounder, maybe next year's 2nd rounder, something like that. Like, now we're in the ballpark where you're not really mortgaging the future to go get a guy like Mason Graham, who I think is, I've said this since the fall, I love his fit for this team. That guy is a certified run stuffer in the middle, and boy, what does the Saints defense need more than anything?
Yeah, I don't think we're going to agree there. I think when you're talking about need, I'm not saying they don't need that, because they do need that. I'm just talking about when you're talking about list of needs after all they've done and spent, the way they've spent in free agency thus far, and re-signings and whatever, and revampings. I don't think you're doing that to draft a defensive lineman in the first round of the draft. Again, it wouldn't surprise me if they do that. I mean, it wouldn't shock me, I should say. It probably would surprise me a little bit. It wouldn't shock me if they did that in the draft. I just don't think that's the direction you're going if you're spending all this money.
Here's the way I'm looking at it. Okay, you have a top 10 pick. It's the first time in 11 years they've had a top 10 pick.
Yeah.
If they may have another one next year, we don't know. But it may be a while too before you have another one. When I'm picking in the top 10, especially if I'm going to trade up higher into the top 10, I want a difference maker. I don't just want to go plug a hole. I don't want to just say, I got a hole in the offensive line. I got to take the best available offensive lineman. This is not a great O-line draft.
No, but if you think that Membu is the freak offensively as an offensive lineman, and I'd rather see him trade up a spot or two, like you talked about, to get somebody like that.
Yeah, and that's possible. Like Membu is a possibility here. Like, and maybe the Saints really like Will Campbell, and he's the guy they want to trade up and get. But if I'm picking in the top 10, especially if I'm going to trade up into the top 6 or 7, I want to hit a home run. I want to hit a freaking Mickey Mantle out of the stadium. Like, I want to go get. And to me, if you don't feel like you're doing that and you're just doing it because it's like, we really need an offensive lineman, and we're afraid Membu will be gone by the time we get here, and we kind of like him and he's the best one, and that's not the right attitude to me. To me, it's like, we're going to go get Mason Graham or Abdul Carter, because these guys are defensive rookie of the year favorites who are going to make, from day one, a big difference on this team. That's what I want. And then you go in your 2nd and 3rd round picks and go plug holes, or in free agency like they did with Dillon Radunz. Like, and am I super happy now with my left guard spot? Nah, but I plugged the hole with somebody passable, and I have a difference maker on defense. That's what I want.
I'm with Gabe. Gabe says it should be the other way around. They should be looking to trade back at that point. I mean, I think if you trade back a few spots, you might still be able to accomplish what you're trying to accomplish and get an extra couple picks. And if any team needs an extra pick, it's this one.
I think the Saints should have traded back last year. I think
you and I are on the same page with that.
The Saints don't trade back. They don't do it.
They don't, but that doesn't mean they won't. But they have not. That's for sure. Going kind of backwards, we are going backwards. Terrence asks, theoretically, we're correct, but one team might decide Olave is the only missing piece and make a big offer. No one's going to decide that Olave is their missing piece. I'm just saying. Okay. And again, you got to get the value of where it fits. And I just don't think the Saints could get the value that they would need to make that trade. So I think we're just wasting time just because articles keep saying, I'm telling you because I know this for a fact. And I know Zach's going through this at the same time. I don't say trouble isn't the right word, but we're trying to be different on that. You can't have the same show every time. When you have a show 3 times a week or 4 times a week or whatever it is, you can't say the same thing every day. So when I'm making a title slide, I don't want it to be the same as it was Monday, and I certainly don't want it to be the same as it was Friday. And so I think people are just making stuff up just to be different. And I think that's what the Olave rumors are. Let's just throw this hypothetical out there, and next thing you know, it gets picked up by somebody, and Saints fans start talking about it.
Yeah, it's the clickbait generation. Yeah, and I'm not going to say that at NOLA.com we're never guilty of it, because if we see something that's going to be a good headline, like that's the business we're in. We need people to want to read our site and read our stories. We do try to be somewhat responsible with it. And that's the only thing you can do. And that's why you're not going to see Olave or Cam Ward trade rumors on our site unless there's something more to them.
If someone reputable talks about it, then we'll jump in. But these rumors that I'm hearing, I haven't heard one single person that I truly respect and follow. There are a few people that I follow on X that are saying, and I'm like, who is this person and what are they saying this for? But I think for the most part, I don't think I've heard one single person that I follow and respect that has said this is a possibility yet. Not that I've noticed anyway.
It just doesn't pass the smell test. It just doesn't.
All right, Isaiah's got a good question here. Or a comment. Idea: we draft Tyler Warren and use Juwan Johnson as both a wide receiver and a tight end too, having another dual threat player when Hill is back. I don't know that Hill's coming back, by the way, or at least not to start the season. We'll see. Would help improve Moore's offense and would greatly utilize Juwan Johnson. I just don't look. Tyler Warren is not a generational tight end, in my opinion. He's a great tight end, and he's going to fit in for somebody right away. I just don't think what the Saints' needs are. And you just spent $30 million over 3 years on Juwan Johnson. I just don't think you're going to go out and draft a tight end in the first round. My opinion.
I agree. And I think people, you have to be careful, because Brock Bowers was a generational talent, and he was there for the Saints, almost there for the Saints last year.
That would have been different.
That doesn't mean that the top tight end in the draft is going to be a generational talent every year. People said the same thing about Dalton Kincaid, that he was going to be a generational talent. He's fine. He's a good tight end, but he's not like a number 9. And to me, Tyler Warren is more of that range. He's a starting tight end in the NFL. He's valuable.
I think that's a great comparison.
You can't get carried away with that.
No, I agree wholeheartedly. Daryl Romero says, I would draft the best offensive lineman that's available. It starts up front. And Derek Branch says, why would the Titans ask for Chris Olave to be included in the trade when they can draft a receiver with the extra capital? I guess good question. Lance Dobart says, Derek Carr makes boneheaded plays more often than he should, but he is an experienced, talented quarterback who in the right situation can get a team to the playoffs. A lot of teams can't say that. I'm still saying, I know he's 12 years in. I'm still waiting to see. This is why I think one more offensive lineman, and at least this team can say maybe they have an average offensive line if they go out and draft a Membu or a Campbell in the first round. I would love to see. I want to see just once what Derek Carr can do with an average or better offensive line.
Yeah, he honestly has not had that really for his entire career. I think there was one season because I covered him some when he was with the Raiders and I was in California. And in 2016, the Raiders did have an experienced offensive line, and I would have to go back and look at the grades. I don't know.
I think they were still 20th in the NFL. That was the best he ever had. Was 20.
That may be so. Like I was going to say, I think they were solid but not spectacular. And Derek Carr was like 5th in the MVP voting that year. He was tremendous. and then he broke his leg at the end of the year. So now that's 24-year-old Derek Carr, not 34-year-old
Right.
Derek Carr. There's a big difference in that, but like I still say there's a lot of potential in Carr in there. He just has not been in the right situation, and like to that commenter's point, like he has not always done himself a lot of favors. Like he does make some ill-timed mistakes, and I think some things he says and does come across the wrong way. I think Derek means well, but I don't think sometimes he gets a little too wrapped up in what people think.
Yep, I agree.
He always says he doesn't. He always says he doesn't pay attention, but I really do think he does.
I agree wholeheartedly, and I think that's part of his problem. Maybe he's changing away from that, because I think that could be part of the reason why we haven't heard a lot from Derek Carr in the last couple months. That's just my opinion. Sean says or asks, so if a coach believes he has the quarterback, Sean, a regular on this show, a regular commenter on the show, I'm certain that Sean is a Carr hater. So if a coach believes he has his quarterback in this draft, you don't move to grab him. How Saints roster is there probably draft 12 to 14th next season. We're completely projecting where the Saints are going to draft next year. I love that. Plus, next season will be a Kings ransom to move up. Well, let me just tell you this, Sean. First off, the latter part of your comment, it's not any more of a ransom. It's going to be the same amount to draft up next year as it will be any other year. It's no, in my opinion, like Zach talks about with the Jimmy Johnson formula, maybe a little bit more in the grand scheme of things. But I think, Zach, that the next year is so quarterback heavy. If you're drafting 12 or 14, which is where Sean and a lot of other hoodats who can't stand Derek Carr are projecting the Saints will draft next year, if that is the case, I think there are so many quarterbacks in this draft that you'll be able to get someone at 12 or 14 that will start right away or close to right away.
Yeah, I don't know. It's so hard because
I mean, we're talking about 13 months from now.
Like Joe Burrow was the number one pick and the consensus number one pick and the obvious number one pick. But if you had gone back a year previous to that draft,
he was like sixth round.
Yeah, like everyone was like, maybe he'll get drafted with a good year. Like we just don't know exactly how things are going to shake out. But I do think you can look at it and say next year's draft is richer in quarterbacks. It's deeper in quarterbacks. It certainly looks that way from a year's distance away. As far as like if they think the guy is in this draft, I mean, theoretically, if Jeff Ireland and his scouting department are 100% convinced that Shedeur Sanders is, the second coming of Michael Vick or, RG3 or Jaden Daniels or whatever, and they think he's going to make an immediate difference, then yeah, they should go up and get him. They should do that if they're convinced of that.
They wouldn't have, and going to that point though, they wouldn't have done what they've done with if Kellen Moore said, there's someone I want in this draft that can play quarterback. Then he's going to talk to management. He's going to be with Mickey Loomis, and they're not going to do what they did with Derek Carr, in my opinion. If you
maybe not, but you may have had to do that anyway.
Doesn't make sense.
You had to get under the cap number, and Carr was the easiest way to do it. And then maybe you saw something at a pro day or something that like opened your eyes to a guy. Like things can happen in different timelines, but is it possible? Yes. Is it likely without being in that room, without being inside Jeff Ireland's head and Mickey Loomis' head and Kellen Moore's head? No, I don't think it's likely. The Saints were at Miami's pro day on Monday, which was Cam Ward, but so were all 32 teams. It's not like Miami only had the one prospect. Kellen Moore's at Ohio State today, for what it's worth. They do have, I mean, they're going to have like 15 guys drafted on that team. So that makes sense.
And the Saints love drafting Ohio State guys anyway. Yeah. So I'll say this about quarterback. You know what I'll say? I'll give you a new one. How about 1.0? 1.0 on the quarterback in the first round. Lance says, Saints are good at keeping stuff quiet, Jim. You mean talking about Chris Olave? Well, if they were good at keeping stuff quiet, then how did some no-name I've never heard of who says they have sources, how did that person get it? Doesn't make any sense. If it doesn't make sense, it isn't true. Brian Cabot says, got to fix the lines of scrimmage. O-line, D-line should be top priority. Third and fourth rounds, they have 4 picks and can really get some good skill guys down. Look, I will say this, Zach, I really think, and back to, does the signing of Dillon Radunz, 4 seasons with the Titans, all on his rookie contract, does that signing change the thinking? do you think, does this team maybe think of Radunz as a starting left guard? Although I'm going to give you some stats to reasons why I don't think they think that. But then all of a sudden you're thinking of a guy like Tetairoa McMillan, who maybe 9 is a little high for him, but I know that a lot of Saints fans are in love with this guy. And I got to say, man, to me, McMillan is a kind of difference maker at wide receiver. He is a special talent. I don't know that I would be all that upset in the grand scheme of things if they went out and got a guy like that.
No, and like
maybe you could trade down a couple spots to get him. I don't know exactly where he's being mocked. Is somewhere around 10 or 12, right?
I want to be careful with how I say this because I don't want to make it sound like left guard is not important. It obviously is. But if there is a spot on the roster where you're like, okay, we don't have a superstar there, but we just need somebody to play. Left guard is probably one of the spots where you could get away with that. Dillon Radunz PFF grades, for whatever they're worth,
terrible.
Out of
57,
out of terrible. 90, out of 135 guards in the NFL who played enough snaps to qualify, he was 91st. So not good, but not like bottom 20 in the league or anything. Now in 2023,
if you're below 64. Okay, to me that's terrible.
Yeah, you're not a starter. Yeah, I mean,
it's not a starter's grade. That's like that's barely level 3 guard in the NFL. That's not good.
Now in 2023, he was 67.2. He was 50th out of 137 guards. So in 2023, he was starting caliber. So it's in there. Can the Saints coach that out of there? Do they feel good enough about him? I don't think they would have gone to sign him.
You bring that up. I've got some stats as far as PFF goes to bring up. Okay. And so people don't, we can throw these numbers out, and the rankings, as you said, are a better way to understand what a positional player is and what is not. But I'll give you some comparisons compared to other Saints grades. First of all, last year he played 15 games. He was injured. He didn't play 2 of the Titans 17 games. So he only played in 15 games. I'd say only, that's fine, whatever. A lineman often miss a game here or there, so that's not that big of a deal. But he allowed 6 sacks in 15 games. That's a lot. Okay, if you're allowing a sack almost every other game, that's a lot, in my opinion. He allowed 23 pressures. That's a lot. So we talked about his PFF grade being 57. By comparison, Nick Saldiveri's PFF grade, okay, we know Nick Saldiveri is not a starting guard. At least he wasn't last year. They had to. But his was 56, so it's only 1 point less. Lucas Patrick, who he was okay, right? 64.6. Trevor Penning's grade, 60.2, which means that this dude was 3 points worse than Trevor Penning. Taliesin Fawangbe was 65.7. So, I mean, going by these comparisons, to me, this is more of a, Lucas Patrick, who went to the Bengals, that's what you kind of wanted, and he filled in okay when he was healthy. But this guy is not even, he's a backup in my opinion. That's what you drafted him for. You don't want Derek. You can't go through what they went through last year and Derek Carr being hurt. Besides, to me, I think all this is shoring up, and Kellen Moore realizes not only does he need more starters, but he needs to have depth on this O-line. I think they've done a great job at shoring up depth. Now they need to go find another starter.
I will also say that guard is a spot where you don't necessarily need to spend a first-round pick to find a starter.
You're right.
You could find a starting guard in fact, you can even find a starting tackle. The Washington Commanders found their starting tackle in the 3rd round last year. Like you've got to hit it. You've got to hit on that pick. It's risky.
That was a little luck. Yep.
But you can do it. So again, if you feel like at number 9, there's a generational can't miss prospect who's going to make an immediate difference on this team. If that's Abdul Carter, he's not going to be there at 9, but at 6 or 7, you trade up if it's Mason Graham, if it's Ashton Genty, or maybe it's Campbell or Membu. Maybe you do feel like one of those guys is a generational talent. I just don't think.
But all these names you're mentioning, somebody's going to fall to 9 out of all those guys. Someone's going to fall to 9. I just don't even think you need to trade up.
Yeah, and maybe not. But it also depends on how you grade those guys, because maybe you look at Will Campbell and the Saints, and you think he's would fit in well, and the Saints look at him and go, I don't like this, or I don't like that I saw on film, or that his measurements or his pro day, or we don't know exactly how they're going to have those guys ranked. But
right.
I would say don't sleep on the possibility of the second and third rounders coming in handy for them as far as plugging holes. I'll give you a name. We talk about Ashton Genty and how cool that would. They do need another running back. There's no doubt about it.
They do.
I really like the kid from Iowa, Caleb Johnson.
Yeah,
I think he could end up being just as good as Genty, and you could probably get him in the second round. So he's a name I would look out for. It's a deep draft for running backs.
it is.
I don't know that Genty's the way you go with your first round pick, but if he's there, he'd be tempting.
Yeah, and my son, and now I see Gabe talking about my son's like all over Hampton, and so he thinks he's up there as well. And look, I think the Saints are most certainly going to draft the skill player in the first 2 rounds of this draft, maybe first 3 rounds. But I was joking. I saw a couple mock drafts again. These people get thousands and thousands of views on X, but people there's no way in hell. This I'm going to say 0.0. There's no way in hell they're going to draft 3 skill players in the first 3 rounds. It's just it's not going to happen. But I do think they're going to draft at least one, and I think. Even though we have Tetairoa McMillan up there, and I think it's a possibility now, I think that a running back is probably more likely. If for some reason Genty falls to 9, I think the Saints are going to have a decision to make. We talk about these other guys, but I definitely think they're going to have a decision to make if he falls to 9.
The other one I'll throw out is corner. The Saints need another corner.
Yeah, no, for sure.
Yeah, if Will Johnson's there, he's the top corner on the board at number 9. You've got to think about that too.
No, and I think that will happen. So, but I think the Saints are going to be in a position, and this is why I think 9's a good spot. We talk about players falling. I think someone's going to be reached on. All these names that we're talking about, obviously, we're talking about more than 9 names if you include Cam Ward and whatever. I just think.
Correct myself real quick. I said Will Johnson was the top corner. Obviously, Travis Hunter is.
Well,
he's almost his own category for me.
He'll be going into.
Will Johnson's the top corner outside of Travis Hunter.
By the way, Hakeem, hello. I always want to say hello when my super regulars are here. Hakeem, and it says the only quarterback worth first round pick is Cam Ward. Anybody else is round 2 or later. I couldn't agree more. We don't always agree, Hakeem, but we agree on that for sure. Who Dat Daddy, welcome to the show, and glad you're here this morning. So yeah, I mean, that's the key to me. And so I don't think, in answer to the question of the headline, I don't think Radunz changes anything draft wise. But there are definitely intriguing skill players that maybe have me backing off of me going ape shit on the live feed if they don't, draft an offensive lineman.
Saints have 6 picks in the first 4 rounds. I would not be surprised if 3 of those 6 were skill players.
Yeah.
If you're going all the way down, the last pick in the 4th round is number 131. So you're not talking about using a real high pick on a skill guy there, but they do need another receiver. They do need a running back. Like these are needs. So are they as dire as the needs on the line or at corner? Probably not. But you also, at some point, you just need good players. That's all you need. You need good players.
Ryan Ashe asks, is the Arizona receiver, meaning Tetairoa McMillan, mocked so high because this is a weak wide receiver class at the top? Where would he rank versus last year's class? Yes and yes. I mean, I think he's ranked that high because it is a weak class, but I also think, as I said earlier, my opinion of McMillan is he's clearly the best receiver in this draft, and I believe that he's a generational type wide receiver. I think he's going to be a starter in this league for a long time, my opinion.
Yeah, I like him. Again, we say top receiver in the draft, like Travis Hunter, depending on how you classify him, is up there too. But I don't know. It's not as good of a wide receiver class as we've seen. But like Matthew Golden from Texas is going to be a good player. Emeka Egbuka from Ohio State, I really like him. Another Missouri guy, Luther Burden, he's a weird case because he was seen as like
those Missouri guys again.
Well, he was seen as a top 15 pick, and now he's sliding down draft.
I'm just kidding.
But I'm seriously a guy like Luther Burden. If he ends up sliding to the end of the first round and the Eagles or Chiefs take this guy, I guarantee you people are going to be like, God, how did we let them have him?
Yeah,
he's going to be one of those guys. So I think there's some, like even could one of those guys even fall to the Saints early in the second round? Maybe. And with the addition of Brandon Cooks, I don't know that that's like right at the top of the needs board either.
Just like there's no, Zach said there's no such thing as 0.0. Well, there's no such thing as 100.0 either, Chad Gage. The Raiders will take Genty 100%. There's no 100.0. They probably will.
That does seem like a total Raiders pick and a total Pete Carroll pick, though.
Definitely does. But, if we're going to be fair, we're going to say there's no 0.0. We got to say there's no 100.0 either, right?
Oh, well, what if Abdul Carter's there? Like, they're, you can't ever say 100% with the draft, except for maybe the number one pick. We usually know in the days leading up.
As someone pointed out, I don't know whether they sent it to me via email or they sent it to me in a comment. I don't remember, but with Mickey Loomis, you can't say 0.0, 100.0 for anything. You just can't. Chad says, okay, 99.9. I think that's a little high. I think they probably will, but I think it's probably more like 60 or 70. All right, before we let you go, because by the way, everybody, I'm as I usually do, I'm going to finish this show with Saints. We have plenty more to talk about when it comes to Saints. Never talked about Ugo Amadi re-signing a one-year deal to come back. Saints needs help at safety, that's for sure. But I wanted to touch your opinion on a couple other things. And even though you're the Saints editor, you're still doing the LSU Insider podcast. You're still hosting those shows. So I want to touch on your opinion, LSU in the Sweet 16 for the third straight year. Wow. You want to talk about a second half for the ages, Monday night against Florida State. I'm going to one of my fantasy drafts, and so I had to listen to the first half in the car. I'm like, why are they playing around with Florida State's okay. I knew they could score a lot of points, but I'm like, Florida State's not this good. What are they doing? And then the third quarter is like maybe new third quarter I've seen in basketball in quite some time. They went from a 1-point game at halftime to just destroying this team and scoring at will.
31-6 in the third quarter.
It's insane.
I was in the building and it was hopping, man. Like it was the best atmosphere I've been to in a basketball game in years. The crowd really got into it, which you got to give them credit. A 5 p.m. tip on a Monday, like not easy for people to get to.
Right.
We did a post-game show on our LSU Insider channel, and like at 4:30, that place, the PMAC was pretty empty still. And I was like, oh boy, this tip time is not good for them. By 5:05, it was full.
They were there.
Loud. And you're right. The first half was a ton of fun. It's like watching a ping pong match,
It was 100 points scored in the first half.
And then in the second half, it was all one-way action. It was like they look good, and they got a pretty good draw in that they're facing a team in NC State that they've beaten before. Of all the 2 seeds you could face, that's the one you'd pick.
Yeah.
Obviously now with Juju Watkins out, which is terrible news at USC. Like you'd rather have USC probably as your number 1 seed, but like I don't think UCLA is unbeatable. I don't know if I pick LSU in that game, but LSU is going out there with a legit chance to make another Final Four.
You got to like their mindset for sure. I like the way they're playing right now, and they just have it. I mean, I think
that's the other part of it.
Yeah, and look, we were worried about Anissa Morrow, and we're worried about obviously Floje, whether she was healthy or not, and they both played fine in the first 2 games, and better than fine, I guess, especially Anissa in my opinion. But they do look fairly healthy, and everyone's going to be banged up a little bit at this part of the season. But to be almost 4-point favorite against the 2 seed shows what the odds makers think about this LSU team.
And they played on a neutral court in November, December, and LSU won that game by 17. Now, NC State's playing a lot better. They split the ACC regular season title. Like, I don't want to make it seem like LSU is going to walk over them. But again, if you had to pick your pick of the 2 seeds, you certainly wouldn't pick UConn. I don't think you pick Duke. I don't think I'm drawing a blank on the other 2 seed, but I think NC State is who you'd pick.
Well, UConn's in there. Yeah, I can't remember either. But anyway, maybe we'll try to have Reed Darcy on the show next week, and we'll talk a little bit about it and see what's going on. We got to talk to Koki about LSU baseball as well, too. I had some people. It was funny. I had a comment on Monday. Somebody was worried, getting like all worried because they lost the last 2. Typical LSU fans. I mean, they lost the last 2 of that series on Saturday and Sunday against Texas. I mean, should we be worried? They're 22-3. No, I don't think. Well, now 23-3. I don't think we should be worried. I think everything's gonna be okay.
Yeah, they're gonna be fine. The game Saturday is the one that kind of sticks in your craw that had a lead and gave it away, and like you just hate that. But we talked. Koki and I did an SEC season preview with Joe Healy of D1 Baseball. our LSU Tigers at NOLA.com YouTube channel. Go back, and it was a couple weeks ago. You can find it. It was really, really good with Joe. And he brought up a great point where you've got to remember, it's a little bit like SEC basketball was this year.
Yeah.
Even the best teams in the country, your LSUs, your Tennessees, your Arkansas, they're going to lose series. They're going to. Nobody in this conference is going 22-8. It's not going to happen. You're probably even going to lose 2 series in a row. Now, you don't want to lose too much momentum, but everybody take a deep breath and remember that last year LSU was 3-12 in the SEC. And by the time the regionals came around, they took North Carolina, who ended up being, I think, one of the last 4 teams standing in Omaha. They took them to the absolute wire. They're going to be just fine.
And not only that, I mean, you're talking about a team that they went and played. It was a top 5 team they played on the road. I mean, it is what it is.
They were like number 8 or something, but yeah.
Who that daddy thinks the LSU women are definitely in the Final Four. Again, there's no such thing as 100.0 if there's no 0.0.
UCLA is very good.
I do like LSU's chances, and I do like the way they're playing. Just to predict, do you think they'll be in the Final Four?
I'm going to say they lose to UCLA.
Putting you on the spot.
I'm going to throw the cold water on everything. I just, you have to respect what UCLA did. They beat South Carolina early in the year. They've been number 1 for most of the year. Mm-hmm. They have one of the tremendous players in the country in Lauren Betts, who is like 6'6" and skilled. And, one thing that LSU had against Florida State was Florida State could not match their athleticism and size inside.
Right.
They did have one big, I was about to say big man, big woman inside who was athletic, but LSU's got like 3. UCLA is going to be able to match him in there. So I think if I had to pick, I would still take UCLA, but nothing would surprise me with the way LSU's playing.
No, there's no doubt about it. I think it will be a lot of fun. I think we're looking forward to it. I'm trying to see when is the date? Do you know the date and time for LSU NC State right offhand? I don't know.
Friday at 6:30.
Friday at 6:30. Okay, so there you go. Friday at 6:30. We will be talking about LSU a little bit more in Friday's show as well. Real quick,
way, Jim, that's like I did want to make this point quick. They left for Spokane Tuesday. Usually you get a breath after that first weekend because of the way they were a Saturday, Monday site the first weekend, and they're a Friday, Sunday the second weekend. They only got 3 days. They have to be there for press conferences and walkthroughs and all that kind of stuff the days leading up. They left for Spokane last night, like less than 24 hours after they were done playing Florida State.
Maybe they wanted to go to the Mariners game.
Spokane's a long way from Seattle, but I would if they had sent me to Spokane, I'd have rented a car and gotten my butt over.
I was going to say, I know you would have tried it. Breaking news from Gabe Henderson. Gary Danielson is retiring from college football play-by-play with CBS. Well, I mean, they didn't have SEC anymore. It's funny, LSU fan, Charles Davis is going to replace him. LSU fans, for some unknown reason, well, not some unknown reason, they always thought Gary Danielson hated LSU, which I think is ridiculous. Just like Chris Collinsworth hates the Saints, Joe Buck hates the Saints, blah, 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 whatever. Anyway, whole different story. Real quick before I let you go, just your thoughts. I know your bracket isn't fantastic, but it's been an interesting tournament so far. It's been chalky, chalk. Can anyone beat the Duke Blue Devils of the Florida Gators?
UConn almost did it. Probably should have done it. So yeah, I mean, it can be done. I think we got a little bit like UConn was so dominant the last 2 years that everybody's just sort of like, well, the best team never loses.
Yeah.
The best team loses all the time. And Duke had an amazing weekend shooting the ball. Like they had the one kid who was like 13 of 15 from 3 or 13 of 16 from 3 this weekend. That's not going to keep up. Like they're going to get pushed at some point. Arizona's a very good team. And then if they play Alabama, that's obviously going to be a test. I have Houston winning in one of my brackets and Duke winning in the other. I don't know. It's weird. It's been such a chalky year that like my bracket's not great, but you look at it and you're like, I think I have Texas Tech in the Final Four, and if that happens, I'm going to gain a lot of points.
That's a possibility.
And
that really is the way they played.
So I don't know. Nobody's bracket's really dead yet, unless you picked a ton of upsets.
I think mine's pretty. If Duke wins the whole thing in our little sports writers bracket, I think I'm going to be okay. But we'll see. You're right. I don't have Texas Tech in the Final Four, so that could change some things. I have Michigan State, and I don't like the way Michigan State played.
That's a different region, but Michigan's
is it? I thought it was the same.
State's got in Auburn's region.
And with Auburn, right? You're right with Auburn. Anyway, I just think, look, I don't think any of it matters. In my opinion, which means nothing, you're right. The best team doesn't always win. I just think this year is different. I don't see it unless someone gets hurt or they just have a completely off night. I just think Duke is so much better than everybody else.
They're really good. You know what I would love to see, and I don't know for sure it'll happen, but it looks like it's going to happen, is Duke and Houston on that Saturday night.
That'd be fun.
Houston will
That'd be fun.
A wrestling match, and that's where Duke could lose, I think.
No, I agree with you. That would be a whole lot of fun. I'd like to see that as well. I know you were excited on day one of the tournament when the Jayhawks went down. So,
well, unfortunately, my Tigers went down like an hour later, so I couldn't talk any crap. I was at the casino. I was at.
That's right. That's right. Garland Gillen was texting me, and I was going to go, and then something ended up happening. And
I walked past. I walked past a guy in a Jayhawk shirt, and he said, some whatever chalk rock they say or whatever it is, like nonsensical cheer.
You know what it is.
And I kind of made a face, and I thought about saying something like, "Yeah, have fun with losing to Arkansas," but then I thought, "Yeah, what if Mizzou loses to Drake?" And of course, they did. So.
I'm going to say this: one of the 5 moments, one of the 5 most fun, maybe not just top moments, but
don't bring this up.
Moments I'm going to remember in my career is sitting next to you in the dome as the Kansas Jayhawks won the national championship. As we covered the Final Four, I think that was kind of comical. Just saying.
I enjoyed covering the Final Four very much. I did not enjoy my walk back from the Superdome to my car, which was at our office in St. Charles, like a 3/4 mile walk in the rain, listening to that chalk rock cheer.
You're just not going to say it right. You refuse to say it correctly.
So I think I got a beer from one of those vendor guys who are like out there on pointers and shotgun.
You chugged it like you chugged it on the show.
I need to control my senses, man. So that was yeah.
Go back and find the show where Zach chugs a beer on Bayou Bets. That's on this channel somewhere. I think it's still on there somewhere.
This is a new healthier me.
Say that you've grown up. All right, Zach Ewing, I'm going to let you roll. I thank you for jumping in here on a Wednesday afternoon. We'll talk more about Saints draft, I'm sure. As lead up, we never even said it. We're going to have a live draft show as we've been doing. At least the first round we'll do it.
We're going to do it, and then we'll probably I don't know if it's going to be the whole second night, but the Saints have 5 picks on the second day.
I'm up for it.
So we'll be in and out at least. And just a note for those of y'all hanging out YouTube, we'll have a Saints Insider this afternoon. Me and Matthew Paris. He's at LSU's Pro Day right now, so he's going to give us a recap of how that went. And like we'll continue the discussion about Saints and Will Campbell because I think that's very relevant.
Yeah, I mean, and you talked to Gabe says he's in if we need him. We'll have all sorts of things going on that night. It's going to be, I mean, we're generally on the air on draft night for about at least 4 hours, probably more like 5. And we're on nonstop, and we usually have fun with it. So we'll have some people out at Saints camp, and you don't need to watch ESPN. We'll tell you what's going on the whole night.
That's right. We'll be ahead of ESPN. We'll get the picks first.
That's right. We will. Yep. We've been doing pretty good at that. So we'll talk before then. I'll have you on the show before then. We'll talk before then.
All right, man. Anytime.
All right. Zach Ewing, everybody. Again, we are Saints Insider this afternoon. Zach and Matthew Paris talking on most of our channels here. You can find the Saints Insider YouTube page just as easily as if you found the Dattitude YouTube page. I would think it's just as easy. I don't know. Who that daddy says thanks, Zach. Yeah, look, me and Zach we have our moments. It's not always as fun when we agree. We don't always agree, but we have a lot of fun. I'm gonna get back to Saints. I got Gabe Henderson coming on in a little bit. He's got some he wants to talk a little bit about the NCAA tournament, and he's got I have no idea what his ooh la la rant is. Somebody's be ranting on the Raging Cajuns this morning. And I'm going to be talking more about the Saints. So we still got about 30, 40 minutes left. Probably about 30 minutes left in the show. Again, we're going to talk more about the Saints draft plans. Get your thoughts as well. I like you guys coming back at me. Keep it coming. You know who comes back at me? We told you earlier we would let you know more about how Evangeline Securities can help you figure out what your family-run or privately held business might be worth and whether it's time to sell. How do they do it? Well, after your complimentary valuation of the company that you own, or maybe it's someone else that owns it. Maybe it's a loved one. Maybe it's a best friend. Maybe it's your mom and them. Whoever it is, native New Orleanians Nick Braden, Ron Hemelt, and the folks at Evangeline can help. They can begin an extensive auction process from among established private equity funds from around the world. And they will maximize the return process for the founder and his or her family. Evangeline Securities is the top producer on their platform. There are very few companies like them in this area, and none, and I mean none, with their dedication and success. They are fully licensed. They're ready to serve you. So get in touch with Nick and Ron about what's really important. It ain't Dillon Radunz. It ain't Tetairoa McMillan. It ain't even Ashton Genty or Cam Ward. None of that. What's the most important, Gabe Henderson? The rest of your life. You can find them at www.evangelinesecurities.com. JC, what's up from Denver? 75 degrees tomorrow. It's 80 degrees. It's going to be 80 degrees here. JC says, cash all the chips in for the number one pick. Are you cray? See what happens. I don't want to say, just do something to see what happens. JC, that's not like you, man. What's going on? Just see what happens. Either you're looking for a quarterback or you got one. We ain't got one. I disagree completely. You got one that's just fine. The bridge to the future. He ain't the future, but he's the bridge to the future. Just fine. Not all the chips. Well, you'd have to do a lot of chips to get the number one pick. Not this year. This is not the draft to be doing all your chips. This ain't the draft to do a lot of your chips. This ain't the draft to do too many chips. Keep your chips. Eat your chips. Chips are good. Now, see, you're just stirring the pot, Lance. The rat is the bridge to the future. I know you don't mean it. Come on, man. All right, we're going to finish the show with Saints, but I want to get to Gabe because not only do we have Gabe Henderson and his Wednesdays with Gabe and whatever he wants to talk about today, but we have a new name for our betting segment, and it's not just because it flopped on day one. It's not just because AI picked the Lakers -4 over the Magic and then the Lakers lost straight up. That's not why, and then Gabe went with them. So they're both 0-1. No, that's not why. I just thought of a better name. We'll show you in just a minute. Gabe, how are you this morning? Or this afternoon?
I'm great. It just so happens you picked a new name for this segment, which is alliteration.
Oh, you broke up on me there. What'd you say? I did what? Oh, we got problems. Gabe, I think you sort of. I think you need to reboot or something. You're like you were freezing up on me. I understood like every third word. Why don't you reboot real quick? Well, I'll go back to Saints for just a minute, and then we'll come back and we'll wrap up the show with Gabe. You can't reboot. Okay. Well, we'll try it again. Hang on, real quick. Well, we got a comment here. AI, it's hijacking Gabe's feed. Rad changed his number. I didn't even know that. You told me. You got me. I have no idea. I didn't know that he changed his number. Maybe somebody's going that he wanted that number from the beginning and now he can have it. I don't know. I don't care. That doesn't bother me. Well, I'm not going to be. I need to stop being mean to the rat. I need to be nicer to the rat. I mean, because you never know. I mean, one day, who knows? I may end up being wrong and then there's no turning back. Then I don't want to be these old crotchety get off my lawn dudes. If the dude ends up being something one day, I don't want to be. I'm gonna say he's good. I was wrong. But I don't want to be, stuck in a world where the rat hates me. We dapped it up. We should be good. I should be nice to him. All right, Gabe's back. He looks like it's all right. We look okay.
I don't know why. It's been fine. We've been on the air for an hour, 19 minutes, and 55 seconds. It's been fine. every single second.
just
of that,
brought up
except
AI.
when I tried to open my mouth.
Since we started talking about AI versus
Yeah.
the machine. All right. What you got? You said you got a rant on Ooh La La. I got to hear this.
Yeah.
By the way, for those of you who don't know Ooh La La, when I refuse to say what they call themselves, we'll just say it's the University of Louisiana that is in Southwest. Yeah, it's about 60 miles from the Texas border. There you go.
It's their school name, the University of Louisiana at Lafayette.
I call them Ooh La La. What you got?
Or ULL or ULLLL after the 2 L's that LSU handed them in the Super Regional a few years ago.
Ooh La 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 La.
Yeah. So let me just preface this with the fact that my views are not shared by my employers, my former employers, or even Jim.
Or the host of this show.
Yeah.
But they might be.
But let me I'm not one to sit here and insult subliminally. I will tell it like it is, and I'll say it to your face. Nick Deming, you are a scumbag.
Wow.
You are a loser, you are a deadbeat, and you are obsessed with your big brother.
That's a little harsh.
Nick Deming is he writes for Rage and Review, who, if anyone knows, is obsessive. They're an obsessive page. I'll give them credit where it's due. They love ULL. They love their Cajuns. That's fine. I love that. I love to support your school. But they take it too far.
It's like UBN's like, Nick who? He wants to get in.
They are delusional when it comes to how big they are. They think they're a lot more important than they are. Their team is not very important. But here's the reason. You're
going off worse than I am. I mean, maybe it's an LSU thing.
So here's the reason that I wanted to talk about this today. Is I've seen him. If people give him the time of day, I'm guilty of doing it before. But he's one of those people that will turn a molehill into a mountain.
Okay.
And he.
What did he do? Like what? Just tell me.
So I'll get to that here in just a second. But basically, anytime ULL plays LSU, he just stirs the pot, and he loves to do it. And so here's the thing. He's one of those people who plays both sides. If LSU wins and they beat ULL, it's, I thought we were little brother. Why do you concern yourselves with us? But then if they lose, it's look, little brother wins. And it's just, he plays both sides and he stirs the pot and he's just an asshole about it. And so last night, for those who don't know, LSU played ULL in both baseball and softball. LSU won 11-4 in softball and 17-4 in baseball. Yeah. I get on Twitter or X or whatever you want to call it this morning, and I see Nick Deming's dumbass is the first person I see. Do you know what he's doing?
You're gonna make me go look. I'm going to look this dude up right now.
Do you know what he's doing?
I don't even know who that is.
In his tweet, and I'm not even following him. No one I follow follows him. It's the little For You page. You know what he's doing? He was arguing balls and strikes in the softball game. Talking about how unfair the softball officiating and umpiring was on a ball and strike call in the 5th inning of an 11-4 game.
He just posted, by the way, he must have heard you because he just, like, literally, it said 7 seconds ago. He posted a flag, a Ragin' Cajuns flag. And then 11 hours last night, his last comment was, everyone on here trying to fight tonight. What's wrong with y'all? By the way, he's at Go Nick, GEAUX Nick on X. While we're giving this dude, he's got half the followers I have, less than half, 1,714. I don't know why we're spending so much time on this dude, but anyway.
Well, it's because I just got worked up at the premise, and like I said, I've seen him before. He loves to stir the pot. He always goes to, he'll enter an argument when he can get something that gets him likes and clicks, and then the second that you prove him wrong, he jumps out of it.
He got really mad 2 hours ago because someone posted "Good morning LSU gang" and bleep you ULL and didn't say bleep. And so Nick retweeted it and said, midweek win flexing AF, but we are the little brothers.
Yeah, so here's the thing. So he tweeted last night, "Holy cow, this is a horrendous call." And it was the call. By the way, this was the bottom of the 5th inning. It was 11-4. 11-4. Keep that in mind. ULL has not scored 11 runs in any single game this season, and LSU is allowed it once. But he and other ULL fans are convinced that they would have come back if not for this one call. Keep in mind, it wasn't 3-2. It wasn't. It was a strike that was called a ball. It was a check swing, and the umpire at third base they checked over to him, and he called it a swing.
Why are you getting pissed off about a set? It's a set. Why are you letting these assholes get you pissed off?
It was a 1-2 count. So even if it's a ball, you're not guaranteed a free base. You're not guaranteed. You're down 7 runs at the time. You have never scored 11 runs.
Why are you
season.
letting this get to you? He's trying to get to you.
No.
Little brother always wants to poke.
It's because the concept of arguing balls and strikes in a 7-run game is one of the most delusional things I've ever seen. So basically,
UVN says a huge call changed the whole game.
And so I took this and I quote tweeted it and I said, "Imagine arguing balls and strikes in an 11-4 game." And then he came back at me and he said, "Imagine celebrating a midweek win like you won a series against Texas." And I responded, "Please, Nick, show me where I celebrated the win." That's all I asked. I didn't retweet the graphic that LSU won. I didn't comment on the game. I'm not exactly proud of it. Do I like beating and shutting these losers up? Yes.
The last time they beat LSU in a midweek game, which they might have done it last year, I don't remember because I don't give a shit. So, but I would be willing to bet that he probably got all fired up last year if you could go find that.
He gets fired up every single time. And then
Lance wants to know if you're fired up because Stephon Diggs went to the Pats.
No, they overpaid.
Pollen level.
Big overpay. So if you want to know how much they're overpaying, the Texans are paying under Nico Collins' new contract. They're paying him $24 million a year. The Patriots are paying Stephon Diggs $23 million a year. So, no, it was a huge overpay.
It's over $1 million a game.
Yeah. To wrap this up, the only other times I think I've interacted with him are during the whole LSU versus ULL, what fans call them. The school name is officially the University of Louisiana Lafayette. And the comeback that they always have when they come back is LSU A&M, LSU A&M. And I'm not going to show it because it's over there. My diploma does say Louisiana State University and agricultural and mechanical college because that is the school name. But the school does not refer to itself as that. And I don't think we really care. If you call them LSU A&M, I don't care. I could
give a shit less.
I do not.
I really
care.
Could. But I'm not calling you what you want to be called. And by the way, and just to be clear, and you now you're gonna get me fired up. But it was made official within the last year or two. I can't remember exactly when. They were basically told to stop calling themselves that.
It's only their athletic department. That's the thing. Their school does not go by that. Their school still calls itself the University of Louisiana Lafayette.
They had to take it off of their sports pages, I believe. I'm fairly certain. Now, ESPN hasn't caught up because they still call them that. And I'm like, just like Zach won't say Rock Chalk Jayhawk correctly on purpose, I refuse to call them what they want to be called. They can piss off.
Oh, I just do it to stir the pot.
Yeah.
If you didn't make such a big deal about what we call, I would probably call you Louisiana. I don't care. But they get so riled up about it, and that's what I enjoy. So that is my rant.
UBN's right. This is the most ooh la la talk in the state of Louisiana since Jake Delhomme. You're probably
shout out
right.
Jake Delhomme.
I mean, he's the last good thing that ever came from that school. Anyway,
there's good things that have come from that school.
Yeah, Jake Delhomme.
Spencer Carr too.
Oh, yeah, Spencer, for sure. Yeah, Spence just laughs at us. All right, moving on. Your thoughts on the NCAA tournament before we get to our new segment that's really new, but again, because we're giving it a new name one more time. But I want to get your thoughts on the NCAA tournament before we move on real quick.
I'm really excited for the Sweet 16 and
I am too,
what's beyond, because a lot of people have complained, and I know you shared the view with a lot of people that you thought it was a bit boring. But here's the thing.
Boring is I didn't mean to. I think boring is probably misconstrued.
Mhm.
When I say boring, I don't necessarily mean I was going to sleep watching the game. I just mean I think compared to some of the other, I never saw the big upset that I wanted to see. I never the fun upset. Somebody like I was watching highlights. Like I don't know why this came up on my feed, but someone had posted a reel of Pete Carrill and Princeton beating UCLA 30 years ago, and I watched the whole little clip, and it got me thinking: is Pete Carrill still alive? By the way, because he was super old then. He just died like a couple years ago. So but it's just been that kind of tournament where I just not getting that fired up. By the way, Chad says, "What do we think of these small conferences leaving the NCAA due to not being able to compete with big conferences?" I don't think they're going to do that. They would cut off their nose to spite their face, but that is part of this. And the NCAA has no one to blame but themselves. But all this NIL crap, I think, it really is kind of destroying the mid majors, and I think that's why this tournament maybe it's just a temporary thing. Maybe they'll catch up. Maybe they won't. But there weren't enough Drakes in this tournament. I guess there weren't.
I don't think it has anything to
from
do
before.
with NIL. Really, I think it's just this was a chalky year.
Maybe.
I mean, hell, 2 years ago we saw FAU and San Diego State in the Final Four.
Yeah, but I think it's starting to catch up now. So I don't know that
I don't
strongly disagree.
If this happens for the next 4 seasons, then we can talk about that. But after one, I don't think you can say that after one.
Yeah, you can't say anything after one season. You're right.
But the one thing I am excited about is if all the favorites win this week, we will have the top 8 teams for the first time ever. The top 8 teams in Ken Palm's rankings in the Elite 8. And a lot of people can talk about how we don't have any Cinderellas this year or anything, but I'm frankly not interested in watching Duke beat, I don't know, who could have upset Liberty.
Liberty.
I'm not interested in watching Duke beat Liberty by 30 in
Liberty
the Elite
Bibbity.
8. I'm more interested in watching Duke, Arizona. I'm interested in watching all of these great matchups. I would rather watch 2 of the best teams in the country go head-to-head at this stage than I would a Cinderella who will just get their teeth kicked in.
All right, we got 10 more minutes and one more segment to get to, and then me finishing up with the Saints. So real quick, is anybody going to beat Duke or Florida?
I don't think anybody will beat Duke. If anybody beats Duke, it's Houston.
I don't disagree with you. I don't think Florida's going to beat Duke.
I don't think Florida's going to get a chance to play Duke.
We'll see.
I think Florida will. I just don't. I don't know. I think it all depends. I don't like their prospective matchup against Texas Tech.
Well, just like you say, you can't judge a tournament over. You need 4 years to judge whether something. I think one game. Florida did not play very well on Sunday.
No, they didn't. But that's okay.
So,
Walter Clayton Jr. is fantastic.
I think that makes Florida a really good bet for this round of 16, the Sweet 16, because like we always talk about, bettors only remember what happened in the last game. So we'll see. And I will do what I say you shouldn't do, and that's to look up something live on live TV. Let's see what Florida's numbers are here. Florida,
I believe they're the second favorite.
Is I don't see it.
Duke. What are you looking for?
I was looking for their line.
Their spread or their future?
Spread.
Gotcha.
Oh, here it is. They're a 5.5-point favorite over Maryland.
Yeah.
Well, another team that underachieved, so it's hard to pick that. But
I like them to beat Maryland. I just don't think Maryland has the depth that they do.
100%. All right, let's get
Maryland's
to
starting 5 is very good. But.
Let's get to our new segment that we started on Monday. It didn't go very well. We were calling it AI versus Gabe. I've changed the name of it for multiple reasons, mostly because I like the sound of it better. It's the man versus the machine. There'll be some days, I'm sure, when Gabe's not here and I'll have to fill in. So when I say Gabe is 0-1, I probably should put man as 0-1. The machine picked the Lakers -4.5 over the Magic on Monday. All of us, really. And I said it too, because I said I liked the pick, but you went with the machine. Okay. So this is how we're doing it. We're going to ask AI, what is its best bet of the day? And then we're going to give you the pick and the reasoning, AI's reasoning behind the pick here on the show live. Okay. I'm going to give you the reasoning. And then Gabe is going to say either thumbs up or thumbs down. He's either going to go with the pick or he's going to go against the pick. And hence how we will keep his record. So we're just having fun with this. And this week today we decided to do it, not necessarily with the game that's tonight, but we don't have a show tomorrow. So we picked a Thursday NCAA tournament game. And it said its favorite NCAA tournament game was Duke minus 9.5 over Arizona. And the reason why, Gabe Henderson, the Blue Devils are peaking. With Proctor shooting, Surge complimenting Flagg's all-around performance, Arizona's pace and Love's flair might keep it competitive early. But Duke's depth and defensive pressure should pull them away late, covering the spread as they did in Tucson. The first meeting was a 14-point margin, supports this, and Duke's recent blowouts suggest they're in championship form. If Arizona's supporting cast, like Jaden Bradley, Toby Iwaka, steps up, they can hang around, but I'd bank on Duke winning by double digits, let's say 82-70. What say you, Gabe Henderson? Are you with the machine or are you against the machine?
I just got done propping Duke up as this unbeatable force. I'm going to fade the machine here.
You're going against the machine.
I like Arizona to cover the 9.5. I will say, though, the machine had good reasoning. If Duke wins this game, I think they'll pull away late. But against Baylor, Duke really struggled inside. And once Baylor's big men started getting into foul trouble, that's when Duke started running away with the game. It was right before half, and then Baylor could just never catch back up. And Zach mentioned it earlier, and the machine talked about it as well. Tyrese Proctor and Duke shooting out of the gym. I mean, they are shooting the ball very well, especially Proctor. He's top 10 in points scored this tournament. I believe he's 4th or 6th. I wrote an update on that earlier in the week. I can't remember exactly. But I just Arizona's got a lot of size and athleticism inside. I think they're peaking at the right time. I'm not going to say they're going to win, but I'd like them to keep it within single digits unless Duke pulls away really late.
All right, Gabe he is going to go against the machine. He's taking Arizona plus 9.5 against Duke. Not that my pick matters, because it doesn't. We're not keeping track of my pick unless Gabe's not with us for that day and I have to make the man versus machine pick, which I do not. But I will tell you give you my 2 cents for free anyway. My 2 cents are I'm going to go with the machine in this one. And the reason being, and I hate going with them 2 in a row. I like bucking the system as much as you do. But I think Arizona had to fight so hard in their last game against Oregon that look, Love is fantastic. I mean, it was fun to watch. The dude was the best player in the gym by far. He's going up against 2 players that are of his ilk in this one. And I think Duke is on a mission. I don't love it. It's not something I don't know if I'll necessarily go out and pick, but I'm going with the machine on this one. Gabe is going against the machine. Somebody's got to be 1-1. Somebody's going to be, I'll say somebody. Something is got to be 1-1 on Friday. Something is going to be 0-2 on Friday. We'll see whether it's the man or the machine. Gabe, I'm rooting for you. I would love to see you 1-1.
I will say I worry about Caleb Love, because if he is taking shots at that volume and they're not falling, which he's had a tendency to do this season, Arizona can get behind quickly. But I think because it's Duke, he'll be extra motivated to hit those shots.
Either way, Friday, we will talk about it, and we will have a new man versus machine. We will basically wrap up the show. At least we'll wrap up our segments. I'm probably still going to finish the show with Saints, as I'm going to do today for the last 5 minutes. But our last segment of each show, at least for now, is man versus machine. I like it, Gabe Henderson. Whether we win or lose, it's all in fun. And we remind you to gamble responsibly here on the Dattitude podcast. We'll see you Friday.
Sounds good.
Gabe Henderson, everybody. Man versus machine. It's just for fun. If you want to go put a couple bucks on it, hey, if you want to go put a couple bucks against it, say, these dudes don't know what the hell they're talking about. We're having fun with it. That's what this is all about. And that's what this show is all about. Having fun. If you want to get a comment, here's your last shot. Got about probably 3 more minutes left in the show as I give you my final thoughts on the title of today's show. Does this change the Saints' minds? Dillon Radunz. Does Dillon Radunz change? Well, I listened to a couple pods. Not necessarily the fanboy pods, but just a couple other opinions of people who not necessarily cover, but are social media presences. That makes any sense. Some people cover them. Some people are there. Does the Dillon Radunz signing change anyone's opinion on where this team should draft? Charles says, great show again. Thank you. Uncle Big Nick wants me to ask the chances he stays awake for the Cubs opener. I don't think I can ask it, but I could probably ask it the opinion. You want to do it on the air live? Let's see what happens. What are the chances I stay awake for the Cubs game tomorrow night? Let's see what it says here as we do this It says that depends. How late is the game? Oh, I mean, you should know. I mean, AI knows everything. It's a West Coast game. If it's a West Coast game, you might be pushing it. But if the Cubs are on a hot streak, sometimes I wonder about AI. Or playing a big rival, maybe that the adrenaline keeps me up. What's my track record with late games? That's a minute of my life I can never get back. Derek Branch, why are so many folks complaining about the Brandon Cooks contract? It's not bad compared to what Stephon Diggs got. Amen. I didn't get back into that, Derek. I meant to. Stephon Diggs, what was it? $70 million over 3 years? Brandon Cooks I think he's 3 months older or 2 months old, somewhere along he's 2 or 3 months older than Stephon Diggs. And he's not coming off. Now, he's coming off of an injury, but he's not coming off of an ACL injury. They're both former Texans. Gabe can root for him somewhere else. Brandon Cooks, now look, he's not supposed to be a number one. The Patriots don't have any receivers. I get it. But still, I Facebook messaged a friend of mine this morning who lives in Massachusetts. My sister lives in Massachusetts, which is how I got to know him a little bit. Just joking around. Did y'all you just didn't know what else to do with your money? Because they have something absurd, like they're like 140 million under the cap or whatever. I'm like, are y'all just spending money just to spend money? He goes, dude, we had no receivers, and they really don't. I mean, Kayshon Boutte is one of their top receivers, right? That just goes to tell you where they are. But still, I mean, Brandon Cooks, I get it. He's a number 3 or number 4 receiver. They paid him $13 million. People were like, $13 million? That's too much. 2 years, blah, blah, blah. $70 million for Stephon Diggs? I mean, this ain't the Stephon Diggs that caught the Minneapolis Miracle. And then the Giants, it's either Russ or Jameis at quarterback. You could do a whole lot worse than the Saints. Just saying. Chad says, depending on who there is when we draft, I could be happier than before going for a skilled position in the first round, looking for an offensive lineman in the second. I just don't. This is a offensive line weak draft. It's a running back heavy draft. I'd way rather. And so I don't want them. I mean, this is what I want, obviously, not what I think. Because we'll get into what I think in the next couple of weeks. And I'm sorry I brought up the Minneapolis Miracle. It just came out. I didn't mean to. Lance, sorry. But I think that you can get I think they need a running back more than they need a receiver, in my opinion. I kind of put T-Mac out there because people are talking. Let's see, people. There's more talk about him in the last week or two than there is about a running back for the Saints. It doesn't change my opinion on it. I still think you need to go offensive lineman. I think Radunz in the grand scheme of things, just because he started with the Titans doesn't mean we talked about his PFF grades earlier, where they rank. It ranks it was like 90 something, 98th or whatever. That's in the third tier. That's not as a starter. That's not even in the top 3. You got 32 starting left guards, 32 starting right guards, even with my limited Shaw math skills. I'll tell you that 64 guards. You want to add another 32? That's 96. So he is in the 4th tier of guards. You don't want that guy starting at left guard unless you don't have to. That's why I think that the Saints still need perfect world. Again, we don't know if Trevor Penny can play guard, but I think the experiment is worth as much as starting Dillon Radunz at left guard or Nick Saldiveri or even Will Clapp or whatever. That experiment to me would be worth it more over those three guys. Now, the Saints, they know what they're going to do. I think they have a good idea of what they're going to do. You can never go into a draft and say, we're going to get this guy or we're going to get this position. I think if you're a GM, that's probably a mistake, which is why we talk about other options. I'm just telling you what the Saints need most. I'm telling you what could make a difference for this team right away. And if they got another starting lineman, more specifically a tackle, if you get a Membu, or if you get a Will Campbell, or whatever it is, whether you put him at left tackle, you put him at right tackle, whether you move Fuaga to right tackle, whatever you do, you're shoring up the depth with the free agency money that you've been spending. To me, that's where I think you go. Again, plenty to talk about over the course of the next the course of the next month before the draft. I don't know who the guest is going to be Friday yet. I just don't know. Larry's got something going on. So Larry Holder will be back on in the next week or two. Kyle Sherman, you just joined in. You watched the replay. It was a fun show. I thought this was a good show. By the way, Lance, I'm sorry. I did not mean to mess up your lunch. You know, I won't say Ooh La La's real name, so I guess I shouldn't talk about plays that really have kind of effed things up for Saints fans. Yeah, I don't know. Cook's numbers were likely down because Dak was out most of the season, says Sean. Well, his numbers were down because he didn't play a lot of the year. He was hurt. I think he only started 8 games, and I think he only was in 10. He missed like half the season, so he missed as much time as Dak did. In fact, I think he might have missed more. You know, Lance, real quickly, you bring up the Shaw Eagles as state champs, so they don't need those limited math skills. We play football in the West Bank. Yeah, but I got to take stats during football games. Completely different, way off topic, but Wesley Laurendine, the basketball coach at Shaw, who brought them to the state championship game, lost in the state championship to Hannon, is leaving for Brother Martin. I found that strange, odd, and kind of hurtful. But the man's he's young. He's got a family. He's got to do what he thinks is best for his family. I don't know why he thinks going to Brother Martin would be better for his family than continuously going to the Final Four at Shaw. Good luck doing that at Brother Martin. Maybe you can, maybe you can't. Christian says trade Olave, swap first round with New England and get Genty. It's not happening, Christian. Were you listening before? Maybe you weren't. So I'm not going to be a jerk. Stop it with all the Olave trade talk, okay? I invite everyone who is watching the show to come back. If the Saints trade Olave, more than welcome to come and fill up the chat with, you're an idiot, Derry. You were wrong, Derry. Do I get to say the same if I'm not wrong? Because they're not trading Olave. Okay? I'm going to, remember I explained 0.0 to you the other day? It's not 0.0 that a meteor is going to fall on us today. But in the grand scheme of things, it is, because it ain't happening. 0.0. Ain't happening. Not trading Olave. Get it out of your head. Not happening. Sean says, the Titans' site, take that with a grain of salt. The Titans, who are the worst team in the NFL last year, said Dillon can be good if you keep him at guard. Well, he played guard all last year. Flopped around too much with it. Not last year. In fact, let me go back to this. Last year, why? So you bring this up. Last year, he played in 15 games. All 15 of them were at right guard. So that is not true. Right off the bat, the Titans site is lying to you. The year before that, in 2023, he saw snaps at every position on the O-line except center. And he played right tackle for the final 7 games of that year. What does that tell me? He's another piece that fits in this puzzle on the O-line. The Saints have done this quite a bit. One thing, look, the offensive line has stunk the last couple of years, but one thing the Saints are good at are getting guys that fit at multiple places. And I think that this might be a guy who's probably suited to play either left guard or right guard. And I agree with that part of it, Sean, that you got to keep him at guard and he would be better there. I just don't think he's a starter. We talked about his grades earlier in the show. If you weren't here and you didn't hear us talk about it, I think you were here. But if you weren't, or if someone else missed it very quickly, I'll just say this. His Dillon Radunz's PFF grade last year. Okay, and this will be the last thing we talk about on the show. Literally the last chance to get in a comment. I don't want to go a full 2 hours today. Dillon Radunz's grade, again, he started every game at left guard, 15 games last year. Oh, I'm sorry, right guard last year. Every game that he started, 15 of the 17 Titans games, he missed 2 because of injury. His grade was 57.0. He allowed 6 sacks, that's a lot, and 23 pressures, also a lot. So if you want to know what 57.0 means, by comparison, Dillon Radunz's 57.0 grade is only 1 point better, 56.0 for Nick Saldiveri, who is at best a backup guard. By comparison, Lucas Patrick, who started a lot of the season at guard and went to Cincinnati, was the Saints' best bet at guard, 64.6. Trevor Penning, 60.2. Taliesin Fawanga, 65.7. So this is where this guy compares. Now, those aren't starting numbers, folks. And I don't think this team, even though, no question, obvious need. If you go down the line right now and you had to pick one spot of the 5, which is the most dire need for this team, there's no question it's left guard. Okay. But I think you can move things around. You're better off moving things around to get it right. I would love to see Fuaga go back to his native right tackle. It's my position. Is it? It's going to happen? I don't know. Lots of things can happen in the draft. Again, all things we'll be talking about. We'll see. But we are going to wrap it up for today because been a good show. I thought today was a very good show. Informative show. See, y'all, we have our biggest, and don't get me wrong, when Mike Detillier is on the show, it's fantastic. When Jeff Duncan's on the show, it's fantastic. When Doug Mouton's on the show, fantastic. When any of our regulars come on, it's fantastic. But I like when Zach comes on because I think it's a very informative back and forth show. Zach knows as much as anybody else that we have on this show. The numbers aren't quite there. It's a good show. That is going to wrap it up for us on this Wednesday. I do want to thank Zach for coming on last minute. I asked him last night. Next week, I think Fletcher Mackel is going to come on next week. Fletcher has some very, and if you're not following Fletcher Mackel on X, you should. He has some very interesting takes, which are completely opposite of mine. Okay. And I want to ask him, I want to have fun with it. He is advocating to draft a quarterback. I'm probably not going to be able to get him to say it on the air, but he's a Carr hater. It's going to be a fun one. By the way, Spencer Rattler did change his number from 18 to 2, which was his number apparently in high school. And I should know that because, as I've told you this before, and I like to spout out, if you go back the old Netflix series, QB1, what do Spencer Rattler and I have in common? We were both on the QB1 series on Netflix back in, I don't know, what was that? It's been a while now, 2019, somewhere around there. They had, and what QB1 does on Netflix, they follow in 3 high school quarterbacks throughout an entire season. It's a 10-show series. And I was the play-by-play voice for all of one of the quarterbacks that were following were Lance Lejeune, who just wrapped up at Ooh La La. He played at Ooh La La last year, his last year of eligibility, I believe. Although you never know. They keep finding ways to get years of eligibility. Anyway, I was the play-by-play voice of all of the Easton games that year. And on Netflix. We'll see. Brian says talk Fletcher into doing it. Yeah, I don't have to talk him into it. He wanted to. We were talking about doing it today. And then today is the Zurich Classic. Zurich Classic, the press conference. So Garland Gillen, he also was going to be there as well. Chad Gage, the number of the quarterback position, he will always be on the depth chart. I think you're being a little uber positive there, Chad. I mean, he might be number 2 next year, but we'll see if he stays there after that. I don't know. Anyway. All right, I want to thank Zach, of course. I want to thank Gabe. Man versus the machine. Let the man win, for crying out loud. We hope you can join us next on Friday. Again, I have no idea who my guests will be, but we will be talking about all sorts of things. And, of course, we will find another Saints angle to talk about, so y'all can all have something to bitch about. That's what this show's about. It's a bitch session. We have fun doing it. A reminder to subscribe to our Dattitude YouTube page if you've not done so already, because we have so much fun here. Click the little bell to receive notifications when we go on the air live, which is every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday at 11 a.m. Central Time. By the way, if you're still watching, if you have not clicked like, please do. They say it helps the algorithm. I don't know why. Whatever. Just click it. I mean, what is it? Come on. I mean, really. Your finger. It's on the screen. Or what if you're watching on TV, just find a way to do it. Click the like button. You can also find us wherever you get your podcasts, including Apple, Spotify, and many more. And find a replay of the show on NOLA.com/sports. You can find me on bet.nola.com. You can find all of our Saints insiders on NOLA.com/Saints. Finally getting warm, Uncle Big Nick. Everyone enjoy yourself. We will see you on Friday. Take it easy, my friends.
If you're looking for the latest scoop and in-depth interviews on the Saints, the NFL, the Pelicans, LSU, along with the best bets of the week, then lucky you. Along with high-powered, in-the-know guests who cover our teams, Jim Derry brings plenty of Dattitude. And he'll always tell you the way it is, or at least the way he thinks it is.